Survivor Specialist Phil and Alexa are back, and once again, I am joined by John and Annabelle to recap MTV's The Challenge Double Agents. Tonight, episode 11 is in the books, and one of my wishes from last week came true. Lolo has left the game in pretty weird fashion. It ended up being a quit, as John and Annabelle both predicted last week, though I do feel like for those who are Survivor fans, this was much more of a Kathy Schleckman type quit, where I think she was kind of pushed out of the game here because she was definitely having a mental breakdown, and the challenge, even by their standards, I think was like, let's get her out of here. But then again, I've never seen the challenge before. I don't know what they do. I was told that I was crazy last week for thinking that Josh was nuts and that I just have never watched the show before. So maybe that's just a newbie's perspective. But John and Annabelle, welcome back to another episode. Lolo is gone. What is your take on what went down with her ouster?
You go first, John.
It's a really interesting aspect. And the big thing that really got it for me with Lolo this week was when she said, oh, clearly my alliance won't do what I asked them to. So there's no reason for me to be here because there's no way to get a gold skull. And it really does start a discussion of, does this gold skull twist incentivize late game quits like this?
Mm-hmm. Annabelle?
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess I should retract my earlier prediction about Lolo trying to become a challenge staple because I don't think that's in the cards for her with how this went down. But I don't know. I definitely could see the comparisons between the Kathy Schleckman quit and Lolo's quit here. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It just seemed like it wasn't going her way and she didn't think she could get it to go her way. So she was like, okay, I'm out. I definitely get she has more important stuff back at home to be training for, but then like, why didn't you stay home and train? I don't know.
And I do feel like that there's a possibility here that they gave her a better send-off than she deserved because she's an Olympic athlete and because she kind of represents the country. And, you know, obviously that's something that's important to TJ because he was representing for, sorry, my thing keeps going in and out here, but he was representing for, the X Games. So at least he's like, I feel like that's something that's important. They do want to kind of like honor Lolo so that it gives incentive for other possible athletes to come onto the show and do things along those lines. So I do think that that could be something that was having an effect here in the way that this was at least edited for her to leave the game. But to me, it's a quit. It feels like a blatant quit. It feels like she just didn't want to be there anymore. John, I like what you said about incentivizing late game quits. I don't know if that's actually the case here. I don't know if it does incentivize these, but it certainly does create that like, well, what am I doing here if I literally never even once got to go down into the crater to do anything?
Which in the end was the entire theme of this week's episode anyways, because we did see Darrell and CT and Lolo and Nom and everyone talking about, I don't have a gold skull yet. All these other people do have gold skulls. How do I get it? Mm-hmm. And it really has come to the forefront where the only way to really get it is by winning the daily.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And throwing yourself down there. Yeah. I think also like when we heard Lolo talking about, okay, clearly my alliance doesn't have my back. It's kind of like that Survivor moment when you realize you're at the bottom. And we did see her flip on them. She voted for Josh and Nany to become the compromised agents. Not that it ended up mattering, but yeah, I mean, I agree. I kind of see it as a quit. And it will be interesting to see if that kind of becomes a pattern if they keep this skull twist in there because it's just getting so like stagnant for the people who are not in charge of everything.
Yeah, and at the beginning of the game, it was easier to get people to send you in because there's so much game left to be played. But now, if you're a big threat like CT, like Darrell, who wants to go against you? Nobody wants to go against you. And so the only way you really have a chance is to throw yourself down there. And good for CT. He ends up winning the daily to give himself that position. Him and Big T have won 2 dailies. They would have won 3 had that one challenge made any type of sense that Cam ends up killing Big T. And but they've won 2. And I'm going to be honest, this security breach that ends the episode does actually make it seem like the fact that it was a tie is a big deal. Because I think what TJ is going to do, and maybe I'm wrong, but at least what I'm thinking is he's going to pull away Lolo's vote and say she left, she doesn't get a vote. And then that would create a tie between Devin and Josh. How you break that tie, I have absolutely no idea. But the one thing that has been consistent on this season is if you don't try, if you don't put your effort in, TJ will punish you. And he will make it irrelevant. And he will, he said, if all the men who didn't try in this challenge, your vote doesn't count. That sets a precedent. And potentially that precedent is going to pay off next week based on this security breach. Now, if that actually happens, I don't know. But it just kind of goes to Annabelle saying it didn't really matter what Lolo did anyway. I actually do think it could have an impact.
Yeah, that's a really good point that I didn't even think about. Because we do have that precedence from that challenge where TJ said, okay, you didn't try, your votes are all gone. And now that Lolo's quit, maybe your vote is gone too. And it could come back to bite Cam and Leroy most of all, because they did not vote for either Devin nor Josh. They voted for Nam.
Okay. I was confused how I didn't see them show the vote and who voted for who.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess they didn't. But they
did, but Lolo voted for Devin and Gabby, right?
He did.
Yeah. So that's
she
Lolo voted for Josh and Nani.
Yeah.
So then it wouldn't actually make a difference.
Yeah. So this security breach, we're just gonna have to wait till next week to figure out what exactly it's going to be.
Unless potentially, like you just said, though, maybe they say Leroy and Cam, since you both voted for Nam and Lolo, you now have to actually put a vote on somebody, and they would end up voting for Devin still. So my whole point seems moot. Don't worry about it. It now seems we'll find out, but who knows? I mean, there's definitely something that could be done here that we just might not know. But yeah, it sounded like a good idea at the time, but I guess it doesn't work out that way because the votes were 8-7, 8-7-1-1. There's 17 people left. 8-7-1-1 was how it went. Or there's 15 people left. So it was
left. We didn't see the exact breakdown. It didn't show us the voting. Yeah. We just know Darrell was one of the votes for Devin. And CD was very offended by that. He's very offended. It's become clear at this point that CT has no idea why Darrell is not talking to him because they've known each other for over a decade. And Darrell and CT are both winners. They both are massive competitors at this point, but they're just not talking to each other. And that is really driving CT a little batty because he's like, I don't know why this is happening. He must be working with Big Brother.
What do we think Darrell's plan is on this season right now, Annabelle? Like what are we getting from what he's trying to pull off? Because I feel like he's barely talked and now he's talking a little bit, but I still don't really understand what he's trying to do.
I think, he always plays kind of a low-key social game. It's a little bit different with the skull twist because he can't just like sneak his way to the end and then beast everybody in a final. He has to do something prior to getting to the end, like the elimination. I kind of think that he's clearly happy with Amber B as a partner. Like he doesn't want to leave her. She doesn't want to leave him. They work well together. It's a good pairing. She has all those Big Brother people. I think he's like, I don't want to say riding their coattails, but like politically, I think that is what he's doing. And he knows that he can beat a lot of the people, well, not a lot, but a few of the people at least in the Big Brother alliance. Like he could definitely beat a Josh. He could potentially beat a Corey. He could potentially beat a Fessy, like depending on what the challenge is. So I think he's just kind of playing the odds and really just kind of relying on his physical prowess and just, hoping that takes it to the end without rocking the boat. That's what I think.
Yeah, I also think he's incredibly confident in his and Amber B's ability to win one of these daily challenges at this point, too.
Yeah, so he has no concern about really going down there early. He thinks he's going to have a chance to get down there at some point.
Yeah, I think that's really where he's at. Though, while we're talking about it, why did the House not throw Darrell down as the House vote today?
To make it Darrell versus CT. I don't know. That's what I don't understand.
You just make it so that CT can't go in to get his gold skull because Darrell doesn't have one and the 5 are already claimed. So if that's the case, why would you not put Darrell down there? And now CT has to throw someone else down. I guess you have the fear that he's going to throw down Josh in that case and Darrell gets his gold skull. But CT also doesn't want Darrell to get a gold skull. So he likely throws in someone like Nom or Corey. And then Darrell has to fight an elimination. If he wins, he still doesn't benefit from it. So there did seem to be some strategy lacking in the house today for the house vote.
Yeah, and I think Darrell, the reason that he ultimately ends up voting Devin is because he feels he actually has a better chance against Josh, and he'd rather leave the option to steal the gold skull from Josh in case it is a puzzle type challenge or whatever it is that Devin's good at. This way he doesn't lose that to Devin because Devin does have skill in these things. Like he was saying at the end of this episode, he beat Bananas. He's beaten people before. So I think that does make sense why Darrell did what he did. But I do agree, unless the big brothers are very confident that Darrell is just with them and they need the number right now because they don't know what's going on. Unless that's the case, I don't know why you don't throw Darrell in and say to CT, sucks. Hopefully this isn't your last chance here because you're not going to get another one and you're not going to go down there and you now can't get rid of Big T. So how are you going to possibly win? You really going to win 3 daily challenges with Big T? I don't think so.
I mean, that being said, Big T won that challenge.
Yeah, she did. She did.
The fact that TJ came down is like, there's not even a point in me trying to pretend this was a close challenge because apparently Big T's a really good swimmer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and good for her. I'm glad that she was able to kind of beast mode it today and she wasn't, being carried by CT or whatever. Not that she normally would be anyway, but it was good to see like that partnership and to see them succeed for sure because they are one of my favorite pairings in the game. But I kind of think going back to the lack of strategy in this decision here to vote Devin and Gabby down, I kind of think it was just more of a political move to not tick off Amber B. And like, if you tick off Darrell, he's going to come for you. So I think they're all scared of Darrell enough to where they're not going to risk him, even if they would be trying to get CT out. I mean, I really don't know who would win in a matchup of Darrell and CT, depending on what the challenge is. Like, I think it could probably go either way. So they probably just didn't want to take that risk of having Darrell coming back angry, and then you've made Amber B mad. And I think it was just more of a political move, and they were just trying to protect Josh.
But if you put Darrell down, CT doesn't go down because he can't win a gold skull. CT needs someone with a gold skull down there in order to win his gold skull.
Right, okay. So you would throw down like a Josh or somebody.
Yeah, so then CT has to throw someone down.
Right.
So CT then probably throws down a Fessy or a Leroy,
who are
strong male competitors for Darrell to eliminate.
And that might be why they didn't do it, because if you do it, CT is going to say, all right, I'm getting rid of Leroy or Fessy because I can't beat either of them. And if they beat Darrell, fine, Darrell's gone. That's a good person to have out of here. So I bet that's why they actually didn't get on board with it, because by getting on board with it, you're actually endangering 2 people who are much more secure in the Big Brother Alliance than Darrell is, because they're probably going to get thrown in. CT's not going to throw in Josh. He's not going to throw in Devin, and he's not going to throw in Kyle because he wants to beat one of them, no matter how close he is with 2 of those 3. He wants to beat one of them. So I guess it does ultimately make sense for them to protect your own. If you throw in Darrell, it makes sense because CT can't go down there and get his gold skull, but the person he's going to throw down is either going to be Fessy, who could lose to Darrell, or Leroy, who could lose to Darrell. So that's why I think ultimately they probably went the route they did.
Yeah, and that logic makes a ton of sense to me. The thing that doesn't make sense is that there was no discussion of that as an option at all.
Yeah, it should have.
And this was definitely a longer episode that could have had that discussion.
Yeah, and it didn't have to be Darrell. You could have thrown Nom down there too, right? Yeah. Just like one of the 2 of them who didn't have a gold skull could have been the person you threw down there, and it could have changed things. But that's not what they decided to do. And it probably is because Fessy and Leroy were like, if we do that, we're the ones going down there. But we don't know because they didn't show it in the edit at all.
Yeah, they really didn't. And I wonder, I mean, I think they'd have to be thinking in that way about that. Or, Cam might have come in and said, hey, no, we can't do that because that would be stupid, because I feel like Cam is kind of a voice of reason to that alliance a lot of the time. So maybe she said something, but I don't know. I feel like, SP Fan 68 says CT beat Darrell in elimination before. Yeah, that's true. but there's no benefit to him going against Darrell in this elimination. It's a no reward, all risk challenge to go against Darrell. So there's no reason, because they're not going to give out a 6th skull, and you're not going to take one from somebody else. So again, will this security breach just be, Devin has been security breached or something like that? Or does Devin actually get, now this is just me spitballing, but does Devin actually get a say in whether or not he competes this one time because he has a gold skull already? Like, maybe he has more power because he has a gold skull to maybe get himself out of trouble, almost like an immunity. Maybe he has something like that could cause the security breach, because I think it's going to be something with the gold skull, or it's going to be something with the fact that Lolo quit. So I know there was like 2 thoughts coming into one, but that's just what I mean. I went from the end of one to the beginning of another because, Michael Scott sometimes, but that's just what I think there.
I had trouble predicting what it could be based on the preview that we saw for next week, because you just hear TJ saying this is going to be your worst nightmare, and it looks like they were in this sort of claustrophobic kind of environment.
And that looks like the daily.
It looked more like the daily.
And I couldn't tell. I'm like, they wouldn't be doing some massive elimination because they already have that pole challenge where you're on the ropes swinging to get the ring set up. So that wouldn't be what it is. I guess that has to be a daily, and that seems like more of a mind over matter challenge. And then you see a bunch of people having a breakdown. So next week should be interesting emotionally.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. It will be interesting to see with the security breaches. I don't think they're going to bring back another female at this point.
I think it's too late now.
Yeah, it is too late.
I think it's also a different scenario, because the last time we had someone leave the game was Natalie, and she had eliminated someone, but Lolo didn't eliminate someone. Right? So it's not as fair as it was to bring back Ashley when Natalie had to leave the game. You don't have that same option when it comes to Lolo. So it doesn't really make sense to bring another woman down. That being said, we've lost now 5 people in this season who were not eliminated, which is a large chunk of this this cast. And they still have more episodes to finish. So maybe they do bring someone back. Who knows? We're going to have to wait till next week to find out. But we're getting drama, and drama's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we saw that today. It was also the thing that made this episode so much better than the last couple of weeks is how personable everyone was. We finally got a ton of confessionals from Darrell and CT and Big T, as well as Devin and Josh, and these people we've been seeing so much of the last couple of weeks. But now we're finally getting a more even edit today with people who analyze the game really well and speak their thoughts really well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It felt like this was more of like a human episode, where I feel like a lot of these other episodes have been like very challenge heavy and then nothing else. And this one, like, it was just one challenge because we don't see a challenge at the very end, like normal. So yeah, I do agree with that. But I just can't get my mind off the security breach. I feel like every time somebody talks, I'm like, okay, what else could it be? And then I also wonder, because John, like you're saying, would they bring somebody back? And now, how many women actually have it? Is it just 3 with a gold skull from the women?
4.
It's Cam, 4. Who is? So it's Cam, Casey,
Casey, and Amber.
Amber B. Okay, so 4 have it. Is there the potential that they eliminate 2 men, and that's what the security breach could be? Because right now, the way it sits, it's what, 8-6? We're down to 14. Is that what we're at? It's 8-6. So Corey and Nam are both rogue agents, which is weird. And then even if a man gets eliminated here, the men still have 1 extra spot. And a woman needs to go down there in order to get her skull at some point. And by having so many men, you're not going to have a woman do it next week, because you're not going to have 2 rogue agent men. And then what would it be? It would be, because it is 8-6 right now, right? Or am I wrong on that? Is it 9-7?
We can go through it. So we have, for the women, we have Amber, we have Gabby, we've got Cam, Casey, and
Nani.
Anissa, and Nani.
And Big T.
And
Big T. So it is. So it's 9-7 right now. Okay, that's what I thought. But still, 9-7, then it's 8-7, then it's 7-7, and still only 4 women have a skull. And that means that back-to-back weeks we're going to watch men have to battle it out. It starts to become really uneven in terms of like how much more difficult it is for the men to get to the end here and how much harder it is for the women just to get a skull in general. So that's the only thing I'm wondering is like, how are they going to even this out in the next week or so? Because you're not going to have 2 male rogue agents for the rest of the game. That would be stupid. That wouldn't make any sense at all.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Annabelle.
Oh, my bad. I think it'll potentially be a double elimination, like to kind of get everything even again, and then you can go back to a women's elimination the next week. And I think maybe potentially this is one of those things where it really does matter who the other people have put their votes on who weren't in the majority, because maybe like the second highest vote getters would be the next compromise pair, and then Josh would have to go down because they're not going to re-vote again.
So maybe there's something where Devin goes down, CT goes against Devin or picks somebody to go against Devin. And then they also say, okay, now the second highest vote getter was Josh. Now you pick or you go. And you would think the double agent would have that knowledge right away with the security breach and would be able to figure out how to like who they would rather go up against, which you would think that CT wouldn't want to go against Devin if he had the choice, just because he'd rather keep Devin in the game if at all possible. So maybe that's the way it works out. I don't know. I just have my mind stuck on the security breach because even like as we talk about the rest of the episode, I do feel like that was actually a really good cliffhanger for once. I feel like the challenge tries to do cliffhangers a lot of the time, and I hate the cutaways in the middle of in the middle of the challenge and things like that. That's because I'm Survivor trained, but you know I hate those types of things, the confessionals and whatever. But this was actually a cliffhanger where it's like, there's some interesting. Finally, it feels like there's some interesting storylines going on because we have CT with the power needing a gold skull. We have Devin getting voted in who has a gold skull and CT doesn't really want to go up against. We know Josh and Nany got the second most amount of votes. And we know that Darrell now is with Big Brother. So I feel like there's so many actually good storylines that it actually leaves you with a good taste in your mouth going into the end of this week and going into next week as you sit here and wonder, what is going to play out? Are we going to see 3 people eliminated in next week's episode? Like, will we start off with 2 men being eliminated off the top and then a woman closing it out? I do think that that's something that's possible. Now, maybe that's a lot because, you know, they still have to fill their weeks and all of that, but it is something that's possible because of where they're at. And maybe they just run less people in the final. Like, who knows? But maybe that's something that they consider because it's supposed to be 10, but I always go to Survivor Micronesia. It was supposed to be a final 3. It wasn't a final 3 because people got medevaced like crazy. That happens.
No, absolutely. And I mean, we're not even talking about some of these storylines that they're setting up in this episode either. Like, CT literally went to Leroy and Cam and was like, give me Josh. I stick with Big T. If you don't, I'm going to mess everything up. So if CT does go down and gets his gold skull, is he going to jump from Big T? Probably. It's in his best interest to. So that's a whole other level of drama that we might be getting next week.
And I would love to see what he would do in that situation. Because even like when Big T was like, that shouldn't even be a question. It's like, they're bringing this stuff up for a reason. I still keep going back to why did they bring up Nam's back hurting? Like, what is that? Is he going to just get destroyed in one of these challenges? Like, is it going to be ugly? You know, so I feel like they do bring things up for a reason, even though it's an hour and a half. And sometimes it does feel a little, you know, inflated. It's a little long. I do feel like, you know, you only have so many minutes. You're going to put stuff in that does matter ultimately to what's going on the season. So could that be in there because CT is going to leave Big T hanging? Because at this point, it's so late in the game, you might as well. You're almost to a final. And then he's going to turn around and he's going to say, okay, great. I'm taking Cam or I'm taking Casey. Or does he take, I don't know, does he take Amber B because she's sitting there with Darrell, who still doesn't have a gold skull, and maybe put Darrell on a team with Big T. And now good luck, Darrell, ever getting yourself in.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, these are the questions that we're at right now. And this is, it's going to have to do with the alliances and everything. But yeah, CT's absolutely going to be going in there, going to be infiltrating the Big Brother alliance somehow, and getting a stronger partner because he can't risk having Big T as his partner for the final.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, what happens if a man and a woman who, like, someone's paired up, someone with a gold skull is paired up with someone without a gold skull on the final day? Like, what happens? Is that other person just eliminated and, like, you get whatever's left? Are you both eliminated because not both of you don't have gold skulls? Like, there's so many variables that it's just safer for CT to leave Big T, get a stronger competitor who already has a gold skull.
I do think that we are going to hit a point, though. Sorry, and I don't know if my internet cut out. I have the little thing over here. But I do think we're going to hit a point where pretty much everybody in the game is going to have a gold skull. Like, I do think we're going to hit that point. I do think that's going to happen at some point. I don't think we're going to be in the worst case scenario of that just not happening. I would be really surprised if we get to the end and there's one person with a gold skull and the partner doesn't have one. Because I think the challenge too, knowing that you could play on a future season and all of that could go on, I think there's more respect involved where you say to yourself, you know what? I want to ensure an alliance further on. And therefore, I will allow Darrell to at least get a chance to get his gold skull.
Yeah, I agree. I'm also beginning to get to this point now because we have 8 more episodes left in the season. I don't think 10 people are running this final.
No, there's no way.
That's what it seems like. That's what I'm saying. It feels like it's going to be less.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It does feel like there are going to be less people running this final, and that'll at least give us some fun stuff in the final stretch too.
I'm trying to think. So if CT does go down and he decides to infiltrate, which is kind of what it sounds like we are leaning toward, with his options, I mean, we see him talking to Cam and Kyle, and he tells Kyle, I think Cam is like way too good for you, you know, blah, blah, blah. But would that really make sense strategically since he and Kyle are working together?
That's a good point.
Take Cam? But I could see him taking a Casey from a Leroy, in which case he pissed off Cam, but that's at least another like degree of separation a little bit instead of taking her directly.
Yeah.
And again, go ahead, John.
I do think it does make more sense for him to take Casey in that aspect because of that exact thing. But at the same time, and maybe this is just me reading the edit, there was a lot of discussion about how Kyle and Cam need to stick together today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're definitely.
So, yeah,
I wonder, like, you know, that's going to put him in a weird position. Who do you take? Do you take Cam away from Kyle? Do you take Casey away from Leroy? I guess the only other one that would really make sense is taking Amber away from Darrell because you're obviously, I mean, Gabby and Devin, you're not going to go with Gabby. Lolo's not there and Corey's alone. So when you really start to break it down this way, you're not going to take Nani from Josh because that doesn't really do you any good. And that just makes Josh a rogue agent, which you're never going to do. No. So that would just be totally idiotic. And then I'm trying to think what the other one. So, and then Fessy and Anissa, you're not going to take Anissa this close to a final because you're not going to win a final with Anissa. Right. So I do feel like it would have to be Amber, Cam, or Casey. But which one makes the most sense for CT? And I'm just assuming CT beats Devin here. Like, and I know we haven't even offered up a hint of the opposite if Devin beats CT, but I just don't see it happening right now because I just think that Devin has been set up to fall flat on his face this season. It just feels like everything he's done, everything that he said, everything that he has been about this entire season is falling flat on his face despite having a gold skull. I feel like CT's the perfect person to beat him. How did Devin get his skull? He was friends with Wes, and Wes did, oh, I'm so sad. I don't want to lose my friend. CT's got to go down and take it from Devin the same way Devin took it from Wes. That's kind of how I see this playing out. And so if that's the case, what's the best for CT's game? And if Devin wins, what's the best thing for Devin's game? Because the best thing for Devin's game isn't to stay with Gabby. All of this points to which group are you going to break up? Are you going to break up Kyle and Cam, which obviously hurts your own alliance, but makes you really solid because you're with Cam? Do you break up Leroy and Casey and make Leroy a rogue agent and take Casey and be the strongest team going forward? Or do you take Amber B from Darrell and then make Darrell have to pair up with or be a rogue agent and not even get a chance to get a gold skull, or have to pair up with Big T or Gabby, depending on what the situation is, or however they're going to play this out, because there's just too many missing pieces to this puzzle right now. But however it's going to play out, which one makes the most sense for this like resistance alliance?
Yeah, there's so many different outcomes that are just dependent on a lot of things. It depends what the security breach is. It also does depend if CT or Devin wins this challenge, because let's be honest, this is probably the one challenge that Devin could beat CT at.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a chance Devin wins. I don't think it's likely based on the edit that Devin has had so far. I think he's been focused on so much that CT is probably going to beat him.
Mm-hmm.
But again, Devin's in the same position as CT when it comes to infiltrating, because you're not going to take Cam because Kyle's with Cam. So I think really what it means is whoever does win this elimination probably takes Casey.
Yeah.
I was actually leaning more toward you take Amber, because he's angry with Darrell. So he could pull a little bit of a revenge move here and knock Darrell down a peg, and then like, sorry, buddy, you're stuck with CT. Or you're stuck with Big T. You're not going to vote with me. You don't have my back after all these years. I'm not looking out for you right now either. So in Amber B, we have seen, I got to quit calling her Amber B because she's the only Amber now, but we've seen she's a really solid competitor. And I mean, Darrell, because he's been sort of riding that middle, I don't necessarily know how strong all of the other Big Brother people feel about him.
Mm-hmm.
They might be fine, like letting him go to the Wolves a little bit, because they don't necessarily want to compete against him at the end either. So that would potentially be what I would think. But a lot of people are in the comments are thinking it could be Cam, just because of how strong she is, and she's not a direct Big Brother person.
The thing is, it was going with Cam is because she's not a direct Big Brother person, it doesn't save you from the Big Brother alliance.
Right, I agree.
Right? Whereas, yes, Cam's working with the Big Brother alliance because Leroy and Casey are together, and she was in it at the beginning because she was partnered with who was her original partner?
Who was Cam's original partner? That was so long ago.
It was one of the Big Brother people.
Mm-hmm.
It was Josh, right?
Was it Fessy?
No,
because Fessy was with Anissa, so it had to have been Josh.
You're probably right. That was so long ago. That was like a galaxy far, far away, man. I don't have that.
Courtney's in the comments here confirming it was Josh.
Okay, good. So, you're on your stuff, man. Just go. Just roll with it. Just be confident, even if you're wrong.
So that got Cam into that alliance, and we even see CT saying, "Hey, I know you're good with the girls. Like I know that, Cam." But if Cam is then removed once again from the Big Brother people, even further with someone, I mean, we already know Kyle's opposed to the Big Brother people, but he's kind of going along with things because of Cam. If she's then with CT, who, remember, Cam tried to get out at the very beginning of the season.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of her big targets in the first episode. Does that then mean that Cam is now at risk from the Big Brother group? Or is the Big Brother group still going to want to work with Cam and switch that target over to Kyle? It's a big question, and it's just going to depend on what these Big Brother players are thinking.
Yeah, and it kind of depends, who do they actually want to run the final with? Obviously, Cam and Leroy want to run the final together. But I guess some of these Big Brothers want to run the final together, but you got to be thinking that if you can have Devin in there, wouldn't you want to run the final with Devin? I guess not, but because they just threw him down there. But I don't know. It just feels weird. Like, who do they actually want to run the final with? And who do they think they can beat here? Because I feel like a lot of the Big Brothers are even. But to me, Casey kind of seems like the strongest. But then there's also Cam, who seems like the strongest. So the two of them, the females should run away with it.
Mm-hmm.
But then who are the men that really stand out there? It's Leroy and Fessy. Well, right now, Fessy's not with Cam or Casey. Leroy's with Casey, and then Cam's with Kyle. How do you maneuver that to actually get what you want to run this final?
I also feel like at this point in the game, like if you don't already have the numbers, you know you're not going to get them. Mm-hmm. So there's not necessarily going to be a huge repercussion if he does end up taking Cam from Kyle, even if he is aligned with Kyle, because they're, in the minority anyway. So he may as well try and bolster his game further to get to the end. Cam has a gold skull, so they're sort of shielding each other a little bit. And I don't know. I'm sort of seeing the argument a little bit more for that choice now.
Yeah, you make a really good point there, Annabelle, where this week was kind of the last chance for those not in the Big Brother alliance to make a move against Big Brother.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that wasn't pushed hard enough on Darrell, from what we saw at least, because in deliberation today, Devin made some great points.
He did.
To vote for Josh instead of him. You keep, for those without gold skulls, you keep Devin as an option to beat. For those with gold skulls, maybe Josh beats CT, but he has a higher chance to beat CT than Devin does. And like, those were great arguments. But I think the big thing that was not stated among these non-Big Brother players was, this is our chance to lessen the strength Big Brother has on this game.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think Darrell cares. I think that's what the biggest problem might be here is I think Darrell just doesn't care. He's got the numbers with them. He feels like that'll ultimately get him a gold skull and he can beat any of them at the end of the day. So I don't think he cares, but he's got to get, I know he's loving Amber B as a partner. So he doesn't need to go find anything. I feel like Darrell is just playing the most stationary game. And it's kind of what we were talking about where the gold skulls might actually be hurting this more than helping this because Darrell doesn't seem like he needs to do anything. It just seems like at some point the Big Brothers just have to give him the respect to throw him down there and at least go up against somebody, maybe Kyle. And then Darrell goes up against Kyle, beats Kyle, and now he gets to run with Cam in the final. Like, who knows? But it seems like he's totally content with where he is right now.
Yeah. And that's the other thing that doesn't really make sense about this Big Brother alliance at this point. Because if they continue going so hard on these non-Big Brother players who have gold skulls. So they're going for Devin now. If Devin's gone, Josh is easily on the bottom of everything.
Yeah.
And like, you're going to start losing your Big Brother numbers because Josh just becomes the easiest target for someone to get a gold skull.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out because I don't think this alliance can act in the challenge with this gold skull twist. I don't think an alliance can get all the way to a final. Just
not
because
all of them. Yeah.
Not all of them. And it'll be interesting to see who they're willing to sacrifice.
Yeah. There's definitely have to be people who are either they're tired of dealing with them or they just don't want to face them or something like that. To me, I don't totally understand why Darrell is so content with where he's at right now because yes, while he has the numbers and he's playing like a really solid political and social game, what if they're kind of pulling that same thing that they were doing with Lolo where they're like, oh, and you get down there, no way. Like, we're just going to run the clock out on you essentially. And then, sorry, Darrell,
maybe
final.
Maybe they're looking at Darrell as kind of the person to take out Nam. And if you want to get your gold skull, we're going to let you get it against Nam. And when you get up there, well, Nam doesn't have a gold skull, so I guess that doesn't make 100% sense. But maybe they're looking at him as the person to kind of take out Nam and then have to take out somebody with a gold skull. And if he takes out Nam, maybe some people throw him a bone or something. But that could be my only thinking is that and Corey is another one. Corey doesn't have a gold skull yet, right?
No.
So that's somebody else. They could be saying, Darrell, you got to take out Corey, or Corey goes up against somebody. And then, okay, there's enough options, I think, for Darrell to still be able to take out people who aren't a part of the alliance, almost as like a backup plan in case somebody in the alliance does actually lose to somebody else who's not in the alliance. Then it's like, Darrell, you got to go do it. This is your chance to get the gold skull. And now Leroy's not in danger. And Fessy's not in danger, or whoever's left out of that grouping isn't in danger because now Darrell's got to go take it from him because that's like okay, Darrell, this is your chance. Boom, go do it. Maybe that's how they're thinking. And that's why Darrell's content because, it is what it is.
I just thought of somebody that might actually be the security breach. What if Nam and Corey have to compete against each other next week?
Oh,
that's a good point.
That would be a good point.
Because then you get rid of the fact that, there's 2 rogue agents. So getting rid of one of those 2 does make sense. It helps even the numbers out again. It just doesn't work timeline-wise is the thing that's really bugging me about it. Is that like a double elimination here just means that we are getting down to way lower than 10 then.
I think you chop 2 people from the final if it's a double elimination this episode.
Yeah. I think you have to. I mean, with just losing 5 people to non-elimination situations and 4 of them women, either that or so last season, if I remember correctly, John, please tell me if I'm wrong, but I think they ran the final a little lopsided in terms of genders. I want to say there were 4 women and 5 men.
I believe that is correct.
I know there were 4 women. I think there was an extra guy though.
Because there was an extra elimination in the final.
There was.
In the middle of it.
And granted, that was kind of like a multi-format season where it ended up being just individual, and whereas this one is very much a pair season, so I don't know if that would work the same way. I think you might have to have even numbers for genders. But I don't know. We have seen it done before where it's not necessarily a 50-50 split.
I mean, we're also assuming that this finals run in pairs. Whereas last season wasn't run in pairs, and like most of the time they are run in pairs. But or at least for some portions of them, but maybe this one's not run in pairs, and that's the mistake that we're making here, is that we're just assuming it's run in pairs.
Yeah, that could be the case. That could be the case for sure.
Yeah, we've seen plenty where there's a male winner and a female winner. That's what happened last season on Total Madness. That's what happened on Vendettas. There's a few others, Invasion of the Champions, but yeah, so that could be, they could just kind of throw the pairing out the window when they get to the final, especially if if it's beyond production's control where the numbers do end up lopsided. I think that's what they have to do.
And I think that's why I like John's theory now of Corey going against Nam, because I feel like they're going to do everything in their power to keep it in their control as much as they can. The women who are left are going to finish this game. That's the way I look at it. We have not been told that any of these women are going to quit. Cam is a finalist in my eyes. Casey's probably a finalist in my eyes. Who knows who else? But Amber B is going to finish out the game. Gabby and Big T are going to finish out the game in some way. They could be eliminated next week, but they're going to finish it out. They're going to go home the way they should go home. And I feel like Nani has been played up to go home in a way that would make sense for her to go home. So I feel like the women who are left are going to finish this out. Really, the only problem for production now is how do you even up the men and women numbers? And I think John's idea here of Nam going against Corey and Corey beating the crap out of him because Nam's back is hurt or whatever it is, it kind of makes sense in this situation, because then you're down to 8-7. Then maybe you run Devin versus CT or Devin versus whoever. And now you have your 7-on-7. And you're back to where you were. And now, you're going to have to end the episode eliminating a woman and get it to 7-6 and be at 13 with however many episodes left. Probably run the final at 8, I would assume. I don't think they'd run a final at 6. That feels too small, but maybe I'm wrong. Because I'm sure like things have happened like that in the past, but maybe they run a final at 6 or 8 and they say, well, first place is getting the money anyway. And you guys got your gold skulls. So let's go.
I mean, they've run finals with 3 people as the competitors before. Like a lot. That's a very common number for them to run finals with, is 3 people. So it would make sense for them to go all the way down to 6. And I think you make a good point about Nam's back, because they mentioned it again today in the daily, where Nam's like, we're swimming and like, I feel my back getting pulled. And it's like, that's the second time. And that's why I didn't think Lolo was going to be quitting this episode. That's why I thought that Nam was going to be the one leaving, because he mentioned his back again. So it has to pay off at some point. There's no reason you mention it 2 episodes in a row without a payoff. It's a Chekhov's gun at this point, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So I mean, but this was an episode that I enjoyed because now we're actually having a conversation about stuff. Like, I feel like the last couple of weeks we haven't had much to talk about, and I feel like coming out of this week we have so much to talk about, which is ultimately what you want coming out of reality TV. You want to feel like you have plenty to talk about, and that like the opportunities and what could happen is endless, and that's how it feels right now coming out of out of tonight's episode. It just feels like, okay, there are so many routes that this game can go. I'm actually excited to see where it's going to go. Whereas, you know, the last couple of weeks, it's been okay. Everything stays the same. Everything stays the same. Everything stays the same. Josh was more reserved this week, which was good. We actually heard Devin talking about his flaws, which was good. We're starting to see a lot more normalcy from this. Josh and Nani's weird, like, hookup thing that was just so strange. I didn't get that at all, but it felt like MTV, and that's what I'm into. And it felt like this was finally an episode that harkened back to one of the early episodes of this season where it's like, great, this is what we've been wanting to watch, and this is what we've been missing for this middle portion of the season. And hopefully Lolo going home is actually what sets this off and really gets it going. I think that could be really great.
Mm-hmm. I'm not one to notice stuff like this, but I couldn't help it this episode. The music, how CT and Big T walk in like right before they go to the club, and it's like centerfold, and they're all like, you know, dressed up. And then at the end, when Lolo's like, "You guys aren't gonna vote for me. You guys aren't helping me. I'm gonna leave and train for the Olympics." And then they play "What Have You Done for Me Lately?"
Yeah.
This is funny. I kind of like the little wink from the producers there with the music. Thought that was a nice touch. So made it more holistic, and we got the MTV stuff too, which was more enjoyable.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. This season had looked really bad. We had to end last week's podcast with hope.
Yeah.
I feel like our optimism has been rewarded today. We finally have this season looking like it's back on the upswing, and we're in for some great entertainment to finish it off.
Yeah. So have we covered pretty much everything we want to cover? Is there anything that we didn't talk about that either one of you want to add, or should I take this thing home then because John ended with such magical words?
We didn't talk a ton about the daily. I mean, it was pretty straightforward just because it was such a blowout. But did y'all like kind of the optics of it and the physical challenge of like getting on that rope?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like this was kind of like, at least it was a little more complex. I feel like there was a little bit of something going on here.
There was some complexity to it, and it gave us that really nice moment, actually, where we got this comparison between Josh totally bombing it. Like, I can't get my rope. I'm trying to get on Nani's rope, and now Nani's in the water. And then Devin leaning into him as hard as possible, which is exactly what you would expect Devin to do. And then Devin also missing the rope. And he just comes back and he's like, yeah, I got egg on my face for this one.
Yeah, that was great.
And it really shows the difference between Josh and Devin.
Yeah.
And the difference between the two people, where Josh and Nani were so pissed off at Devin that they had to go off.
Corner.
Yeah, go off from the main group. And Devin's just like, everyone's cheering for Gabby and making fun of Devin. And Devin just joins in on it.
Yeah.
That's why Devin's such a great character.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing that people forget about trolls like Devin. Normally, they're self-deprecating, and that's why it's so hard to get to them, because they don't give you the opportunity. It's the whole Tyrion Lannister of, like, wear your armor and never, like, wear it with pride. Because if you wear it with pride, nobody can hurt you. And I think that's what Devin does, is he's so self-deprecating and talks about himself and is so self-aware that it bothers people who aren't self-aware while he's ripping on them, because he knows what he's doing wrong and stuff. And it's frustrating them as they're trying to get back at him, and they really can't get back at him.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, we also had Anissa refer to herself as a turd.
That was excellent.
Yeah, that was so funny. Yeah, that was hilarious. But yeah, I mean, I thought the daily looked good for sure from a perspective standpoint. It was a blowout, so not a lot to talk about on it. And I think that's why we ignored it. But it was ultimately down to the Devin versus Josh feud again, because that's how it always goes, it seems like. But yeah, I mean, I thought it looked good, but you know, there's still been better challenges, and it's, you know, it's in the middle there.
I kind of wish we actually TJ gave us the times.
I know.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, there's no
I
way
want
to
know. I want to know how badly.
Yeah.
I want to know how impressive it is that they did this. We know he said it was a blowout, so we know it was by a few seconds at least. But I want to know exactly how long they beat it by.
I know. Yeah. I need the measurement. I'm such a numbers person. I want a scoreboard with all of the times. I want to know exactly what the distance is in yards or meters that they have to swim. Because, like, just looking on TV, I don't know how far that is. And some people are completely winded, and some people have, like, no problem with it. So what is it, like a lap in a pool? Is it longer than that? I don't know. I wish they would tell us.
Yeah, and some people decide to backstroke it instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, too, because they don't tell us the details a lot of the time. And a lot of what brings an audience in is being able to relate or say, I could do that. I've swam 100 yards or 100 meters or whatever it is. And that does make a difference. So, I don't know. Maybe that's something that they would do in the future, but I highly doubt it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I think that about covers everything for episode 11 of the challenge. We'll be back again next week with episode 12. We will have a special guest for that one. I will announce that during the week. It is not a challenge person, but it is a Survivor person who is a big fan of the challenge. So we will have somebody coming on next week to sit down and talk with John, Annabelle, and myself. John and I continue our movie podcast. We talked about Back to the Future, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade last night. So make sure to tune into that one. Find it on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, wherever you want to find it. You can listen to our classic Survivor episode, which last week was the twist, talking about the classic episode from Survivor Africa. Next week, we will be talking about What the Part 1 and 2 from Survivor Pearl Islands, best known for the Outcast twist. We will be joined by Andrew Savage for that. Alexa and Robert, intern, as I like to call him, because that's what his real birth name is. They will be continuing Survivor South Africa with episode 3 next week. That will be on Monday. Become a patron, patreon.com/Survivor Specialist. $20 patrons get daily content. $10 patrons get weekly content. $5 patrons are getting monthly content. $1 patrons are a part of the Facebook group that all the other tiers are a part of. So a lot going on, a lot to be excited about. Make sure to join all of those things. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram. And the three of us will be back next week with special guest person who will be down there in either the right or left corner, I don't know which yet, to discuss the challenge episode 12. Have a good night, everybody. John and Annabelle, thanks for being on again.
Thanks, Phil.